So I guess the first thing I wanted to say is that, first of all, we're not insurance brokers, and it's really important to know that. We're not agents, and we don't provide insurance advice. That's why we have a broker who's behind the program. What we can speak to is things like what's sanctioned, what's approved, and what's permissible under the program. So for any specific insurance questions, we always refer people to Paul Holman of Holman Insurance. It's a family-owned business that's based in Ontario, and he's licensed to provide insurance information all across Canada. And that information is contained on the final slide. So just a general overview here. We go to the broker and on an annual basis, and we give him some expectations and what needs to be covered, and he provides some advice for us. And then the broker goes to market and finds us a program or an underwriter that will cover our needs. And then what the broker does is he helps to define what we can and cannot cover through sanctioned and approved activities. And that's the really important thing, is that there's things that we can sanction and things we cannot sanction. So we have some good guidelines. And the broker gives us loosely frames this so that we know what we can and cannot do. Can we have the next slide there? My notes aren't even working now, so I'm just striking right out here. So just got to remember that this is a presentation primarily for Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta, and that the associations have different rules and license options, and they all have to follow the basic parameters of the broker. But if you have a question that's really specific to your province, you'll need to follow up with them afterwards, because there are significant differences between what Ontario does in Manitoba and Saskatchewan and Manitoba. It's all similar and under the same general parameters, but we do things just a little bit differently to suit our needs. So don't hesitate to reach out to Heather, Twyla, or Sarah for specific questions. We'll go to the next slide there. This is over to
me.
Sarah.
Yeah. So yeah, this next slide here is more the liability insurance is more what our clubs can use, as they are, at least in Saskatchewan, they're often planning more of the events. But really the liability insurance just helps protect clubs and the people in the clubs against legal responsibility arising out of any negligent action or a failure to act. So this is what helps to protect everyone if there is ever a claim. And so then our sport accident is what comes into play if there ever is an accident. So it's structured to provide a core level of coverage and benefits with the principal sum of $50,000 per member. So this is broad coverage that can cover a lot of things that you can see there, that if there were anything to happen beyond it because of members' control. So it pays for your medical bills on behalf of an injured member. So it can cover if you've got like dental problems, if you need to call an ambulance or anything like that. So it can cover all those things there for you. And then it's just important to note that this coverage is considered secondary coverage. So you must first use up any coverage that you have privately, whether that's through anything that you have privately or if it's through your work benefits. So that needs to be used up first, and then this will come into play after everything is used up. And the important thing to note is if you ever expect, or if you ever even have an accident, you should always report it within 30 days of an accident so that we can get it on file with the insurance company within 30 days. And generally it's, we have to document it within 90 days from the accident. So that's the core coverage in our policy. So this is kind of optional coverage that you can choose to purchase for yourself over, above and beyond what our core coverage offers. So the first one is the personal cycling coverage. So this is for things that fall outside of our normal sanctioned activities. So it will cover things like if you are just out for a bike ride on the highway and it's not considered part of a training plan, or it's not considered part of a club activity, or I believe this will even cover if you're commuting to work, sort of thing. So there's different amounts of coverage, and so it just depends on kind of what you are expecting you might need. And if you ever want to apply for that, I think most of our websites would have it on our individual website as well as, or you can just go to the Canada Cycling Insurance website, which we will be providing as the very last slide. And so then this one is if you are traveling outside of Canada, it's excess travel medical insurance. So this is kind of things that, like if you get hurt outside Canada, if you need to go to the hospital or anything like this, this will help pay for any medical expenses that you're needing to use well outside of Canada. The cost is $7 per day, and you have to apply for it through your provincial association before you are leaving for the trip.
And a lot of these coverages are subject to a schedule. So if you look at your sport accident and you go on the website that we'll link at the very end, it lists the schedule of payment. So it's the broker refers to it as a menu of items, and the optional coverage has specifics as to what it will cover. It does cover some pretty neat things like repatriation if you were injured out of the country or even potentially out of the province. So you need to look at these things to see if you require it. And what's really critical about this optional coverage is most policies that you may be able to buy, I don't know what the provincial policies might be, they typically won't cover competitive cycling. They'll cover a recreational ride potentially, but if you're in competition and you're in the United States, most business policies or homeowner policies that have some sort of medical coverage won't cover competitive cycling. And it's a great program, and it's been used in times of emergency by many athletes and club members to return to Canada after they're medically fit to return. Whereas if you don't have it, you may find yourself driving back to the border with serious, grievous injuries, looking for your provincial healthcare program to cover you, because the medical care in the States is astronomical.
Okay, so now we're going to get into some of the questions that were received from you guys when we went and asked. So the first one is there insurance coverage on something like a regular Monday night club ride? So yes, as long as the club has told the association what they're doing and it's being considered a sanctioned activity, then you can have insurance. And is there coverage for a club sanctioned trip? So the question or the answer there is yes, as long as it is as long as it's approved by the association as a sanctioned activity. So all the clubs just need to approach the association. We might all do it a little bit different, but just make sure that you're asking for sanctioning for an activity. So is there any planned reduction of fees or carryover of membership for this period where club functions and events have had to be canceled? So unfortunately, no. At this time, we have already paid our premium, and we are not going to be able to have a reduction in insurance rates.
Oh, this is me. Sorry. Yeah. Does insurance cover me when I am cycling outside of sanctioned events, therefore excluding club events? The short answer is no. Coverage is only for sanctioned and approved activities. So depending on which province you're with, how they approve activities might differ from province to province. So make sure you check with them, and you want to check with your province for any additional coverage that may be available, as we discussed earlier, like the 24/7.
Over to Sarah.
Yeah. So why should I purchase insurance and or membership if I am not allowed to group ride or race at this time? So this one is, I think all of the associations right now are opening up a little bit. So we'll just have to leave it with you guys of whether you feel like there is value there in supporting your local cycling association, of whether you should be purchasing a membership or not.
And as we're going through this, if you have questions, you can definitely type them into the question and answer box there, and as we see them, we will answer them. So if there's something in our answers that needs more explanation, don't hesitate, and or we will add them to the end here if there's anything that comes up as we go.
I can grab this one.
Yeah, if you just want to jump down one.
Oh, where am I going here?
I'm not sure where we are now.
We're going backwards.
Okay, I think that's when we were on.
Yes.
What are clubs' insurance responsibilities when it comes to events? Do all clubs need to carry insurance if they are hosting group rides and or events? So to be covered under our insurance program, then the short answer is yes. As long as they're approved and sanctioned activities, your affiliated club, and your participants are club members, then you should be good.
So do all riders at a club event have to have a membership? And the question is, can a person come and try it for a day with no cost? So the first thing I would suggest is you check with your provincial guidelines, as it does vary province to province. However, in general, the answer is yes. The one restriction that's pretty typical across all provinces is that there's a waiver that is required to be signed prior to the non-member taking part. And this is called the tryout ride. Sometimes there's a few more restrictions. The club must report information back to the association office, but it's a great way of getting people to come in, try it. And it's quite rigid because there has been abuse in the past. But if you want to bring someone out for a ride, you can designate a ride as some sort of a social gathering to bring in new members, and you sign them up that way. But you definitely can get this. It just varies a little bit by province. Okay, next slide. So does insurance cover instructional lessons within a group ride? And it's pretty straightforward on this one. Coverage is extended to NCCP certified coaches. And that's the extent of it at this point. Oh, there's a potential question down here. So we have a question from Natalie. Thanks for the question. Are half, full day, or weekend skills clinics considered events? Participation would include club members and public. Coaches would be club riders, NCCP trained, and PMV1. So which province are you in, Natalie? If you could just type that, unless someone knows.
She's with Phil.
Okay. Do you want to answer?
The short answer is public, then they're not considered club members. So you would have to let us know that there's an event that you want to have non-members at, and then we'd have to look at whether or not we could provide you additional insurance on top of that.
I think it's safe to say that most of these events either can be facilitated, and sometimes they require a consultation with someone like Heather, or we have to reach out to the broker to make sure that we're within boundaries on it. But there's broad parameters that do allow things to go forward. So when you have a plan, contact the provincial office and they'll guide you through it. Okay, any other questions here, folks? Oh, perfect. I don't know if we've done a good job or a bad job. There's no questions here.
No questions.
And the thing that's important here is that although Paul Holman's located in Ontario, he is licensed throughout the country. It's a family-owned business, and we've been with them for 4 or 5 years now. And they've put together a website. And Heather, if you click that link, sorry, Sarah, if you click that link, will it open up to the website? Just to give people an indication of what it looks like. This is your this is your non-legal interpretation of what's covered. Who knows, it may not open up, but I would bookmark that as a reference, because it often gives you an indication as to what the wording is, the terminology. It covers all the schedules. Yeah, that's, you just scroll it down so we can see the top there. It's cyclinginsurance.ca. It outlines the member provinces, and it has an awful lot of information on there. So it outlines the schedules, it has the forms. Most of the forms are duplicated by the provincial offices on their websites, but once again, it's a great reference point, and then you can talk to your provincial office, and if there's more information required, we have ways of getting this out of our broker to assist you on your inquiries.
The one thing that I would like to point out to anybody from our clubs there is that they've got this section down here under the info and admin about risk management. So I think a lot of, so this should be kind of your starting point of what you need to do when you're running a club ride or a club event, is you have to make sure that all of these risk managements is being covered off, because that is what our insurance is saying you have to do.
Okay, any more questions for us? Holy smokes, we've stunned the crowd.
Wow.
Yeah. Do we maybe want to open up mics and see
I
if
can open up.
people want to talk more? I think I can stop share.
I gotta get to my. So I may have just opened up the microphones for. Oh, I think I have to do this individually, but. It's funny, I can do it one by one. But it's not going to work. Well, I've opened it up so that in theory everyone can talk, but I don't know if you have to unmute your own mic, but I can see Jeffrey's picture on the side there, and maybe it's just a case of him. Yeah, Jeff, if anyone wants to unmute their mic and come on and ask questions, by all means, I've set it up so you can do that. Yes, I think I have. Yeah, I have.
Yeah, I think so.
Hi, this is Mark from Regina, Saskatchewan. Sarah knows me, obviously. I think, I know in my case, what I tend to do is I tend to just default and go straight to Sarah. I just kind of give her a call more than else. I'm lazy that way. I think the biggest question that I've had in the last few days is group riding on a casual basis. Where it's 4 or 5 members of my club that all get together and we go for a ride. Now, we're all members of the club as such. How would that fit in to the current insurance framework? And I'll mute my microphone.
Okay. I'll answer that because it's a little specific to Saskatchewan here. But right now, and I don't know if you saw my email from today earlier, Mark, but the government just announced today that they're allowing sport to open up under phase 3 as part of the, what did they call it? The gym and recreation. So right now we're allowed to do riding on a casual basis. So everybody that if you're thinking of starting any sort of club activity, you should be looking on Saskatchewan Cycling website, and there is a document about return to play, some procedures there. And so everyone needs to follow those procedures, as well as tomorrow at 5 o'clock, we're going to be actually having a club president that week meeting on Zoom. There was an invitation sent earlier today, so we can be asking all the questions sort of thing tomorrow on Zoom for all the club presidents.
Okay, I can follow. I'll follow up tomorrow after. I'll be on that call as well.
Sure.
Okay, thanks, Sarah.
Anyone else there? Yeah, it's a crazy situation across the country. You know, when we look across the, everyone has different return to sport. Everyone's following different guidelines, and I've been in the sport for 20 years. I've never found a more confusing time than I have in the last 3 weeks. And Ontario is the second worst province in the country, and we're opening up rapidly. And the guidance that we're getting is just insanely confusing, but it's really encouraging to see that the casual and the group rides and some of the club activities are coming back virtually across the country, and some provinces have opened up completely, like PEI. So it's encouraging to see, and hopefully we can use this responsibly. And you know, sport is such a big driver of the economy that the governments are largely don't recognize. But Sarah was telling me a little bit about the changes, and Heather was telling me about her changes, and everybody's different. And the good thing is anything that's legal under provincial orders, rules, legislation, laws, however it's couched, we can facilitate and approve and sanction. So that's the good news coming out of this. And it's rapidly evolving. And I think this is kind of neat to see that Sarah's on the ball here with communication and reaching out to the club presidents, and clearly we'll be able to outline what you can and cannot do. And I think Heather's in sort of the same boat with rapidly changing things as well. I think in the last couple of days, and we are too, we went from 5 to 10 in the group as of this Friday with no notice either. So it's neat to see that it's happening. And the real takeaway is we can sanction and we can approve these activities as long as they're within our usual, you know, club stuff and activities like that. So that's good news. Anyone else there?
I question whether we can actually group ride anyway within this social distancing guidelines. You know, we're allowed to have groups of a certain amount, but we also have to social distance, and you really can't group ride and social distance.
Yeah, they're not going to be what a group ride usually looks like. Everybody absolutely has to be 6 feet apart, sort of thing. So it's not really a group ride, but it's the closest that we're being allowed to right now.
Yeah, maybe the second hour of a group ride.
Yeah.
That's all
Very
shattered.
spread out group ride.
Well, I was just gonna share my screen here once I figure out how to do that. You know, you think I'd know, or I know how to do that as the host here, but
Are you trying to show that diagram, Jim?
yeah.
I can
So-
pull that up on mine here.
I got it over here. I'm not going to say this is perfect, but this is what we're contemplating in Ontario. So in some areas of the province, we're allowed to ride 2 abreast. So we just came up with this staggered. And actually, this was suggested to us by a respirologist and a surgeon. This is kind of, let's take the 2 abreast, take the rider off the, so it's really single file, but sideways displaced. And then in Ontario, this allows us to meet the rules where traffic must be tight to the right in certain circumstances. It's very easy to go from, you know, staggered to tight to the right. And then the real challenge we're seeing as we observe cyclists is this 2-meter gap. It's proving really difficult to maintain that. And if you're on a diagonal, it probably needs to be a little further. But the respirologist told me that there's actually no science on this 2 meters for cyclists. Yet every one of our provinces is sort of approving 2 meters, so it's good to go. And then of course we have our usual formation of a single file or a single echelon. So those are the 2 that we came up, and so far it's going over well. And I think if anyone comes up with anything else, we'd certainly circulate it and share it. But this is a start for us, and I think it's a start for all the provinces. What we want to do is no more. It's what we need to do in order to stay safe. And these are just some ideas we came up with.
In my opinion, the 2 meters is nowhere near enough. That's meant to be a standing,
Yes.
not a moving. Any, you know, a respirologist that doesn't ride in a group doesn't realize that you're getting drip, sweat, everything at that distance.
No, for sure. Okay, my thunderstorm has not materialized, but I tell you, the clouds are moving through fast here. Any further questions? Happy to entertain them. There's somebody in the chat here. What do we got here? No, we don't have anybody. I think some are measuring 2
Oh,
meters.
it's Twyla.
It's
She
2
says,
meters wheel to wheel.
yeah.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
Everyone keeps saying 6 feet, but it's 6.5 feet sort of thing. So We tried to use a bike and a half, but our legal team said, no, stick with what our government's saying, which is 2 meters. So anything further? Well, if that's the case, anything you want to say, Heather, Sarah, before we go?
Muted. No, I don't think so. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for coming, folks.
I hope we answered everyone's questions.
We're learning that the more we do this, the more we learn, the more our clubs and people learn, and I think we'll just continue doing these things, and hopefully we can get lots of great questions and continue to expand everyone's knowledge on the insurance program. Thanks very much, folks.
Thanks for putting it on. Have a great night.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Great night, everyone.